If I had to use one word to categorize him, I would say rugged, because he's one of those guys that brings physicality to the passing game, and that's something that the Titans really loved about him. And you could play action, throw a slant to him, or any short route, and he'll catch it, and he'll break tackles. And he's one of those players that DBs don't really want to tackle because he's so big.
You got your Mag guys here on Birds 365. We are going to add a third very educated opinion to the mix. That's our buddy Turron Davenport from ESPN, talking some Titans and specifically some A.J. Brown. It's been, I think we had Turron on before the season started. Been a while. How you been, big guy?
Oh, everything's been great. It has been a while, but it's always good to, come on and talk some shop any opportunity I get.
It's good to see you, Turron. Obviously, for those who don't remember, and most do, Turron used to cover the Eagles before he went down to Music City. So, first off, how is it down there in Nashville? How is it? You've been doing a great job covering a really good team. The Tennassee Titans, obviously disappointing for them last year, but how's it been? How is Nashville?
Oh yeah, Nashville's great, man. It's been a great experience. The city is continuing to grow, so that's a pretty cool thing to see. There's always something to do, so I can't complain, not at all.
Yeah, but it's not Philadelphia.
No, hey, listen, you see in the background, I always keep Philly in my mind. You know what I mean? I definitely missed the 215, but like I say, the 615 is treating me well.
Well, one guy who is hopefully going to treat the 215 very well is A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
Howie Roseman, a lot of accolades up here in Philadelphia for pulling off that particular deal. What went wrong in Tennessee, do you think? Because this is a really good player who's really young and proven, and you don't see that a lot, Turron. The guys like that become available. Is it just the numbers that AJ got on the contract?
Yeah, I tell you what went wrong. Christian Kirk signed with the Jaguars.
That's what went wrong.
That's
for
what
everybody.
went wrong, and everything seemed to be going in the right direction. $20 million per year was pretty much where they were going to end up, and that Christian Kirk deal happened, and then you saw Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill. These guys had those deals, and Tory Dandy, who is kind of like the agent of the wide receivers, so I need to have guys in the $100 million range as well. And Deebo Samuel with his issue with the 49ers, and then AJ, and there was a back and forth as far as contracts were concerned. Now, when I spoke to AJ, he told me that it was $16 million up to $20 million with incentives. He said that $22 million would have sealed the deal. The people I talked to within the Titans, they said that they offered $20 million without incentives. They didn't know that $22 million would have sealed the deal. And they said that the response that they got from the $20 million was upwards of $25 million annually, with $80 million guaranteed. And $80 million is a record-setting guarantee amount for a receiver, and they weren't going to do that. And again, this is from the Titans side. And at that point, they said that communication was cut off, including with wide receiver coach Rob Moore, who was very close to AJ, and a trade was demanded. And then the Eagles swooped in, and the deal was made. Traylon Burks was on the clock, so they were able to make the deal, select him rather. And Howie Roseman and the contract negotiators for the Eagles did an awesome job of negotiating a deal, a $100 million contract, in a very short period of time.
Yes, let's give some credit to the Eagles for A, being on top of the situation, and B,
Yes,
being able to get the contract done. It's funny that the way you laid out. I'm really glad it was about money, that it wasn't something on top of that it wasn't, because we talk about wide receivers all the time. There's a lot of divas in the group of the best wide receivers. Are you telling us AJ not that guy? It was plain and simple, just a business deal. They got close. The market rearranged. AJ wanted to rearrange with the market, as well he should, and Tennessee wasn't ready to go there. that's the number one reason, the overall arching reason that he's a Philadelphia Eagle right now, Turron?
Yes, it's money. It was a money, as you mentioned, the market rearranged, and he wanted to rearrange with it.
Should.
There aren't any issues with A.J. Brown as far as like within the locker room or anything like that. You talk to anyone. I mean, look, I will tell you this. The coaching staff, they are very upset that they had to lose A.J. Brown. They're very upset. I know that for a fact. And then you could even look at Mike Vrabel at the video that they showed on draft day when they made the trade. Coach Vrabel had to get up and walk away and just kind of like give you one of those and then come back and sit down. That lets you know how much they liked him. And I tell you, just from being in you guys kind of experienced it at the press conference, he's an electrifying person. Like, he's someone that you smile, he smiles, you kind of have to smile back at him. And he has a way of lighting up a room, and his presence is always felt at practice. So there aren't any off the field things or anything like that. He's about to, have a second baby. He's going to have a son. I remember when he told me that he was pregnant, his girlfriend was pregnant, with his daughter. And he's a family guy. There aren't going to be issues. There aren't any.
And he brought his daughter to that press conference,
Yeah.
to Jersey. Yeah. So makes some sense. Maybe they'll live in South Jersey with Jody and I. So and Jersey will get to live in Jersey, but we'll see how that shakes out. Style of player, obviously big body. What type of player are the Eagles getting in AJ Brown?
If I had to use one word to categorize him, I would say rugged, because he's one of those guys that brings physicality to the passing game. And that's something that the Titans really loved about him. And you could play action, throw a slant to him, or any short route, and he'll catch it, and he'll break tackles. And he's one of those players that DBs don't really want to tackle because he's so big. I mean, broad shoulders, that 225 is a legit 225. He's essentially built like a running back. And one of the best plays that he made, if you go back to 2020 and look at the game against the Ravens, it was week 10, and he caught a short pass, and Patrick Cream, the linebacker, he came over to tackle him. He broke that tackle. 2 Ravens DBs came over to tackle him. He dragged them like 7 yards into the end zone. And that's what you get. Like, he's very, very good at getting yards after the catch. And that's because he does a really good job of accelerating through the catch. Well, you see a lot of guys who aren't confident with their hands. They'll kind of slow down and they catch it like that, and then they have to pick back up. Whereas he just accelerates through, he catches it, tucks it, and goes. And that allows him to get that separation of yards after the catch.
Turron, this story got some pretty good press here in Philadelphia. You just told us a great tale about Mike Vrabel not being happy about the Titans parting ways with their star wide receiver. Well, they weren't apparently the only ones that are unhappy, because some Tennessee fans via social media reached out to AJ Brown, and he deemed them threats. And he unfortunately had to cancel a camp he was planning on having down in the Tennessee area. We here in Philadelphia kind of wear our fandom with pride. Some people go a little overboard, and we try and back off that pride a little bit. But we do love the passion of the Philadelphia sports fan. Was this the passion of the Tennessee sports fan? A couple knuckleheads taking it too far? I thought it was unfortunate when I read that story. It sounded like AJ desperately wanted to do the camp and wanted to stay in good graces with the fans down there in Tennessee. What went wrong?
Yeah, and it wasn't as much him feeling threatened as much as it was, and I really respect him for the decision, right? And I'm someone who, I look at situations and I say, let me make sure I keep myself out of a situation where something could happen. And that's exactly what he did. And in essence, people like Mike Tyson had the best saying. He had the best saying. He said, social media has too many people comfortable with saying things and not worried about getting punched in the mouth. And that's essentially what it is. AJ Brown didn't want to be in a situation where someone who is so comfortable talking recklessly to him on social media does the same in person, and he reacts. So rather than put himself in that situation, he said, I'm not going to have the camp and give you guys the opportunity to test me and have me do something possibly that could really impact me. And I think that was a very wise decision. So that's more where that's coming from. There were some threats and things like that, but again, it's just wise just to stay away from it. And I think he did the right thing.
Yeah, I do think he did the right thing. I agree. A lot of players I advocate, try to stay away from social media as much as possible because there are so many toxic comments, and people are human. And if you say bad things at bad times, bad things can happen. So I agree with you there, Turron. Want to talk about the Titans since we have you, and obviously you mentioned Mike Vrabel. I get the feeling that Mike was really upset about the number one seed and the opportunity the Titans had. And they really outplayed the Bengals, let's be honest. Should have won that football game. And all of a sudden, the devastation when a season ends in the NFL in general. But when you think you have that opportunity to make a significant run at the Super Bowl, it's even worse.
Right.
Is that how it was? That's what it looked like to me out from the outside looking in. Was Mike devastated about losing that opportunity?
Yeah, they all were devastated, honestly. Ryan Tannehill, he even had to go and seek counseling and therapy to work through that loss. And he had the 3 interceptions. Everybody will point to him and blame him. It was a team effort as far as losing. And each of those guys, I remember a locker cleanout day, everybody was like, I expected to be preparing to play the Chiefs, and instead here they are preparing for the offseason. So it was really just like a train wreck, a car wreck. Things just came to a very abrupt halt, and the guys were really disappointed. Mike Vrabel as well, and it just kind of was what it was.
Turron, was the blow softened by the fact that the Bengals then next week went into Kansas City and beat the Chiefs too?
I think that probably made the blow even worse.
Oh,
because
the Chiefs were gettable. That's what you're telling me.
Yeah, I mean, they felt like they played well enough they felt like they should have beat the Bengals. And, knowing that they felt they should have beat the Bengals and the Bengals turned around and beat the Chiefs, I'm sure that just kind of twisted the knife a little bit.
Well, to kind of spin off that moving forward, Turron, it seems like with the offseason, there was all that movement. It looks like the AFC is so deep at the top. So there's so many good teams, so many good young quarterbacks. And, people kind of look at the Titans, who were the number one seed, and say, they're in the we're not ready crowd now. They lose A.J. Brown. As you mentioned, people don't believe in Ryan Tannehill at times. And certainly when you talk about the Joe Burrows of the world and the Justin Herberts of the world, never mind the Patrick Mahomeses. That's tough. Are people underlooking the Titans all of a sudden because of one loss that they probably should have won? It's still a really good football team.
Yeah, they still have Derrick Henry. They acquired Robert Woods, who I don't know how, but he was out there in OTAs, after a torn ACL in November. They drafted Treylon Burks. They still have, and that defense is still there. So they still have the pieces to make a run. But I think it's, how the NFL is, man. It's all about, the most recent push and most recent moves. And, you look at the Broncos, you look at the Dolphins, you look at the Raiders. These teams all made moves, and you look at the Colts, right? They got Matt Ryan. Rodney McLeod is in their secondary now. So, there's teams that made big moves. They won the offseason, and those are the ones that are getting the attention. But the Titans are still being the mix, in my opinion. I think they are very much in place to win the AFC South. A 10-7, 11-6 record is very doable for them. And you know how it is. Once you get into the playoffs, who knows what can happen. We saw that in 2017.
Turron, who is there more pressure on this year trying to slide into that A.J. Brown slot? Is it Woods, or is it their first-round draft pick, the rookie Traylon Burks?
It's Burks without a doubt. And it's unfortunate because Burks is actually a prospect who was, compared to A.J. Brown as far as playing style wise is concerned. And they are very similar. And then you have just the fact that trade was made and literally 2-3 minutes later, Burks was selected. So they're always going to be tied together. So it's absolutely on Traylon Burks more than anyone else.
Robert Woods is a guy that the Eagles were interested in before, and they went through this process where they couldn't get receivers. They had interest in Christian Kirk, but then the Jaguars paid Christian Kirk, and the Eagles said, Godspeed, we're not going to pay that for Christian Kirk, and that was the right decision. They had interest in Allen Robinson, but he decided he wanted to play with the Super Bowl champions, which is understandable. Robert Woods specifically wanted to go to Tennessee. You would probably know better than most why that was. I don't know why it was, but Calvin Ridley started it all. The Eagles weren't able to get that done. And all of a sudden they get A.J. Brown. But Woods is a guy I want to focus on, Turron, because you're going to get to see him, and you've probably seen him already at OTAs. You and I have talked a lot over the years and about route running and receivers. Woods is one of those guys, man.
Yeah,
he is one of the best route runners in this league. And I was advocating the Eagles to get him if they could. He's one of the most underrated receivers in football. Now he's coming off an injury. But how impactful do you think he's going to be for the Titans?
Yeah, I think he's going to be very impactful. And I think his potential for impact has actually grown with A.J. Brown not being there. And that's like an obvious statement. So why do I say that? Well, of course, there are going to be more targets. You take A.J. Brown out of the picture, that's a 23% target share that's up for grabs. But I'm looking more off the field stuff as far as a leadership perspective. You have a veteran in there that is known for his hard work. You see how Cooper Kupp opened up and said how much Woods impacted him. And we're talking about Cooper Kupp, who was potentially the best receiver in the league last year. So you got a guy in Traylon Burks coming in as a rookie. You get to see a guy who is a pro's pro and knows exactly how to go about attacking each and every day at the same position. You're with him every day and you're watching him every day. That is going to be a big impact for Traylon Burks. So I think, that's something that will help. But then also just the way that he's a safety net. You look at Jared Goff, you look at Matthew Stafford. These guys, they loved to target Robert Woods. And I think that's going to continue with Ryan Tannehill. And he has that yards after the catch ability. And he's someone that you could move all across the formation and do different things with, even line up in the backfield. So his impact to me is going to be really significant. The potential for it, rather, I'll put it that way.
Turron, I think it's week 11. The Titans are coming into Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Where are you going the night before, by the way? Since you're coming in on Saturday, you're returning to the 215. You're going to be here covering the game. What are you doing on that Saturday night before?
I'll probably come in Friday, to be honest with you, catch up with family, and you just, do some of that. And then Saturday, that'll be the time to just, have some fun. I have a few particular spots I'll probably hit. Ashton Cigar Bar, one of my favorite spots. So, I'll definitely go there. Chima is one of my favorite restaurants. So I'll make sure I skip lunch so I could really take part in the all you could eat, the continuous Brazilian steakhouse. They keep bringing it. So that's probably going to be on the menu.
Been there, done that. Very good. Yeah. And hopefully they save this tape. So maybe you get a little discount on your bill. But I'm just saying.
Free shout outs, man.
You got a couple in there. I didn't mean to do that, but since you did, good for you. Good on you. Week 11. Who will be the starting quarterback of the Tennessee Titans at that time?
Oh,
it'll still be Ryan Tannehill, barring injury. It'll still be Ryan. Malik Willis is an outstanding prospect. I think he was the best quarterback in this draft, but there's still a developmental aspect to it. They're going to bring him along, and I would be very surprised if he starts this season, but you may see a package with him as far as like how the Ravens used Lamar Jackson, how the 49ers years ago used Colin Kaepernick.
Do you think, barring disappointment. You mentioned injury. Injury's obvious. Obviously, anybody in this league, if you get injured, it's next man up. But I kind of mentioned before, Turron, number 1 seed. If there is a hiccups, disappointment, if we're talking 5-6, if we're talking 6-5, mediocrity to that point in the season, is there any push at that point, or just he's not ready, Malik Willis? You think it's a true developmental situation?
I think it is a true developmental situation, whereas they're starting from the ground up. I mean, they're still, they're working on him getting more acclimated to being under center, right? To go and play action and turning your back to the defense and then flipping back and picking up, the picture that you saw before you turned your back. So it's going to take like catastrophic type of play from Ryan Tannehill for him to not play this full season. And Mike Vrabel is the type of coach where they're not going to give up. Like, they're not going to throw the towel on the season. And you look at 2019, they had a pretty tough start, but then they turned it around when Tannehill started. But that was a veteran you were able to go to from Mariota, whereas it's different now because you're going to a developmental guy. And they're going to try everything they can to not throw him out there too early, because this is the guy that they want to bring along and have him eventually take over.
And I got to give the Titans props, because they were a much better defense than I thought they were going to be last year. The defensive show that they put on against the Rams in season might have been the best defensive game that anyone played in the entire National Football League this year. Can they be as good defensively this upcoming year as they were in 2021?
I think they can. And that change defensively happened in season, where they just kind of figured out a way to consistently harass quarterbacks. And you have Jeffrey Simmons. Harold Landry is back. He was one of their big guys that they retained. Bud Dupree is further removed from the ACL. So, yeah, I think they could be back, and it'll be a full season of David Long and Zach Cunningham. You look at Kevin Byard, who, a Philly guy, then Atlanta. These are all guys that can definitely make that defense just as good as it was last year. And it's all about getting after the quarterback. But this year, what they want to do is improve by creating more turnovers.
At T Davenport _NFL. Make sure you follow Turron on Twitter. Does a tremendous job covering the Titans in the NFL. Read them at ESPN.com. I want to take you, my last question, I want to take you back to the 215, Turron, before you have that cigar, because you know how this team is run. You know Jeffrey Lurie, you know Howie Roseman, not just A.J. Brown. I want your sort of macro view of the Eagles offseason, because they're getting a lot of, pats on the back. Do you see it that way from afar in Nashville?
I like the Hassan Reddick signing. Obviously getting Jordan Davis. They finally drafted a linebacker. How about it, right? Kobe Dean in the mix, and I think he has first-round talent. I'm curious what they do at safety. That's the one that I want to see.
They really like Marcus Epps, Turron. They really like him. Yeah.
So that's he's going to be the starter then. He'll be the guy. Okay. Well, I mean, when you take Rodney McLeod out of the picture, I was curious how they were going to replace that. So you're saying that. James Bradbury bringing him. I think overall, I think they did a solid job, right? And A.J. Brown as well. So I just want to see Miles Sanders get more opportunities. I want to see them actually give him a chance to be the guy that he's capable of being. Of course, he's going to have to stay healthy too, though.
Turron, one of the couple of reasons we like having you on. Number one, you're a Philly guy. Number two, you're a straight shooter. So I'm going to have to ask you to shoot me straight here. Okay. Last year's playoff game, we talked about the disappointment that it was, and great answer that, they felt worse when the Bengals went and won. I had not thought about it that way, but I believe you know better than me. Last year's playoff game, Derrick Henry coming back. Good idea, bad idea?
I think it was a good idea. It was a good idea to come back. I think it was a bad idea to use him as much as they did. I thought Deontay Foreman ran more effectively, and for whatever reason, they used Henry. There was a 4th and short that they didn't convert. And I felt like if they had Foreman in there, he might have been able to get a better push. But that's the dedication to your players, right, that Mike Vrabel has, and they had Henry in there. So, yeah.
He is King Henry, and they did ride him a little bit, and he wasn't quite the king that day against Cincinnati. Well, the Kings coming home in December. We'll be opening the city wide for you. Turron, thank you much for coming on with us today. Have a good season with the Titans, and we'll see you back here in Philly in December.
No doubt. Appreciate you guys having me on. Looking forward to coming back home in December.
Thanks, Ron.